It was a sunny and breezy morning in the little community of Olumo, tucked deep among Nigeria's southwestern woodlands. The hamlet was tranquil, hidden away between dense forests and rolling hills. The community had a rich past, full of legends handed down from generation to generation, tales that thrilled the spirit and occasionally kept the pulse pounding long after the sun had set. Chinwe was a young lady who had suddenly found herself alone in the world. She had lived in the bustling metropolis of Lagos, working as a nurse at a busy hospital, but the stress had started to take a toll on her health. After the tragic loss of her mother, Chinwe decided that it was time to move away from the commotion and live in a peaceful area where she could recover, both physically and mentally. One day, while she was browsing through her phone seeking for a new place to call home, she happened onto an advertisement. A beautiful 3-bedroom house for rent, quiet, peaceful, and affordable. The price was way too modest for the sort of home it appeared to offer, but Chinwe wasn't one to question good fortune. With a heavy sigh, she decided to phone the number mentioned in the ad. The phone rang twice before a deep, raspy voice answered. "Good afternoon, I'm Mr. Odie. You're calling regarding the home, yes?" "Yes," Chinwe said, pleased to finally get a hold of someone. "I saw your ad. I'm interested in renting the house." "Ah, it's a lovely place," Mr. Odie remarked. "Very quiet, very calm, just a short bit out of the settlement. You'll enjoy it, I'm sure." "Great. When can I come see it?" Chinwe questioned, anxious to see it in person. "Tomorrow would be perfect," Mr. Odie answered promptly. "I'll be there to show you the house." The talk ended, and Chinwe spent the evening envisioning what her new life would be like. She could already image herself sitting on the veranda with a cup of tea, the warm Nigerian sun lowering on the horizon while she read her favourite novels in solitude. It sounded wonderful, perhaps too perfect. The following day, Chinwe made her way to the home with a combination of joy and apprehension. As she drove through the narrow dirt roads of Olumo, she marvelled at how beautiful the surroundings were. The forest appeared to encircle the settlement, its trees throwing lengthy shadows on the ground. The air was rich with the aroma of moist soil, and birds flitted amongst the trees, singing their wonderful tunes. Eventually, Chinwe arrived to the residence. It stood at the end of a long, twisting walk, tucked between 2 enormous, towering trees that appeared old and wise. The home was a big, white edifice with exquisite designs engraved onto the walls. The windows were large, allowing lots of sunshine to flow in, and the front porch looked like the ideal location to relax and enjoy the evening air. Mr. Odie welcomed her at the front door with a bright grin. He was an older guy, his face worn by time but still keen in his moves. His eyes, however, were unsettling. There was something about them that made Chinwe feel uncomfortable, like they were concealing something. But she pushed off the emotion, telling herself that she was here for a new start. "Welcome to your new home," Mr. Odie remarked, his voice almost too sweet. "Please, come in." As Chinwe came inside, she was instantly struck by how calm the place was. It was different from the city, yet in a sense it seemed too quiet. She gazed about, noting the high ceilings and the large open areas. Everything seemed clean, almost unnervingly so. There was no indication of dust or cobwebs, even though the home looked to have been abandoned for a long. "The house is perfect," Chinwe added, beaming. "I can see myself here." "Good," Mr. Odie responded, his lips twisting into a tight grin. "It's always been a peaceful house. Very little occurs here, and that's the way I want it." Chinwe's interest piqued. "What do you mean by that? I thought you mentioned it was a nice place." "Oh, it is," he answered, his voice falling. "But some things are best left unsaid. People come and go, but the home remains the same, if you know what I mean." His remark sent a shudder down Chinwe's spine, but she shrugged it off as him merely being quirky. After all, what kind of landlord would openly admit to a house having a strange history? "I'll take it," Chinwe responded, her voice strong. "When can I move in?" "Whenever you're ready," Mr. Odie responded immediately. "Just don't stay out too late on your first night. The jungle may be perilous after dark." Chinwe nodded, but she considered his caution unusual. The sun was still high in the sky, and she wasn't one to believe in old wives' stories. "I'll keep that in mind." With that, Chinwe signed the documents, gave over the rent money, and made preparations to move into her new house the next week. As Chinwe settled into her new abode, she couldn't help but detect a sense of loneliness seeping in. It wasn't the type of seclusion that made you feel comfortable and at peace. It was the kind that made the walls appear to close in around you. The home, however gorgeous, seemed to throb with an energy she couldn't quite define. Her first night arrived, and the village appeared unnaturally silent. The birds had stopped chirping, and the typical noises of animals in the distance were strangely missing. Chinwe stood on the porch, staring out into the trees. The wind rustled the trees, but there was no other sound. It felt as if the whole planet was holding its breath. As darkness fell, she decided to go inside, but before she could lock the door, she heard a gentle, faraway murmur. At first, she assumed it was the wind, but the voice seemed too clear, too near. "Chinwe, Chinwe!" She froze. Her heart skipped a beat. The voice was distinct. It wasn't the wind. "Who's there?" she shouted out, her voice quivering slightly. There was no response, just the faint rustle of leaves. But the voice persisted, louder now, almost as if it was inside the home with her. "Chinwe, you should not have come." The air appeared to become colder, and Chinwe's breath became visible in front of her. The hairs on the back of her neck sprang up as the voices became louder, suddenly encircling her. Panic set her, and she slammed the door shut, her heart thumping in her chest. She turned and stumbled back into the house, her mind racing. What was happening? Was it simply her imagination? The following morning, she walked into the village to speak to the elders, hoping to discover some answers. But when she talked to them about the bizarre incidents, their features grew pale and they averted her sight. "You've moved into the wrong house, Chinwe," one elder eventually stated, his voice cracking. "That house is cursed. No one who has ever lived there has lasted long. The spirits of the forest do not welcome outsiders, and the house itself is bound by evil." Chinwe shook her head in surprise. "But Mr. Odie told me it was peaceful." The older sighed. "Mr. Odie is no ordinary man. He is the custodian of the home, and when the home beckons to you, there is no escape." Chinwe's thoughts raced as she went back from the village elder's home, the old man's words resonating in her ears. "The house is cursed," he had declared, and those words coiled in her thoughts like a snake, coiling tighter with every step she took. She had to find a way to grasp what was going on, but everything seemed too overpowering. The silence of the home, the murmurs at night. Was it just her imagination? Was she losing her mind? When she came home, the sun had already begun its drop, throwing deep shadows over the ground. The home appeared precisely as it did when she first moved in, its lofty structure presenting an ominous shadow against the orange sky. The forest loomed behind her, dark and menacing, and Chinwe couldn't escape the impression that the trees were watching her, whispering secrets to each other just out of hearing. She pushed herself to breathe deeply and stepped inside. The stillness in the home was overwhelming. Even the customary creaks and moans of an ancient structure seemed to have gone. The air seemed thick, weighty, as if the house itself was waiting for something to happen. As soon as she entered, a cold surged over the room, making her quiver. The drapes, which had been calm before, suddenly flapped as if moved by an invisible hand. Chinwe glanced around uneasily, her heart racing. Was she imagining this? She felt something brush across her ankle, and when she glanced down, there was nothing there, only the aged wooden floor under her feet. She made her way to the kitchen, hoping that something familiar might anchor her. But as soon as she went inside, the door to the pantry swung open on its own. Chinwe froze. Her heart hammered in her chest as the door creaked, like it was begging her to approach closer. "Get a grip," she muttered to herself. "It's just the wind." But even as she said it, she understood deep inside that it wasn't the wind. There was something else, something ancient, something much older than the mansion itself, that was moving in the air. She gulped hard and stepped up to the pantry, pausing before pulling the door open entirely. Inside, the pantry was dark, the faint scent of mildew and dust permeating the air. But when Chinwe got closer, she discovered something strange, an old, ragged book sitting on the lowest shelf. It was a hefty, leather-bound tome, its cover worn with age. She bent down, curiosity overpowering her dread, and grabbed for the book. As soon as her fingertips touched the cover, a strong, abrupt blast of wind surged across the room, slamming the pantry door shut. Chinwe gasped, her heart thumping in her chest. The wind vanished as suddenly as it had arrived, but the book in her hands felt strange. The weight of it was nearly too much to take, like if the book itself was alive, beckoning her to open it. She paused for a minute, but her hunger for information outweighed her dread. Slowly, she opened the book. The pages were yellowed with age, the writing fading but still readable. What she saw made her blood run cold. It wasn't a book of history or folklore as she had expected. The pages were packed with symbols she didn't recognize, strange glyphs, twisted forms, and phrases written in a language that appeared to crawl off the page. She scanned through it rapidly, her thoughts racing. Was this some type of old ritual book? A grimoire, perhaps? There were sketches of faces, deformed, twisted, etched in the margins, looking out at her with empty eyes. Chinwe couldn't stop herself from reading the words, even though every part of her shouted to throw the book down and go. But the more she read, the more the words seemed to lure her in, wrapping themselves around her thoughts like vines, tightening with each passing second. "The house is bound to the spirits of the forest. Those who stay there will never leave, unless they surrender a soul." Chinwe froze. Her heart skipped a beat. The words appeared to blur as her gaze moved between them. Offer a soul? What did it mean? Before she could read farther, a loud crash from above startled her out of her concentration. The book dropped from her hands, dropping with a gentle thump on the floor. She rose up, her body rigid with fright. Her initial inclination was to flee, but something held her fixed to the place. The home seemed alive, as if it were breathing with her, waiting for her to make her next step. With a deep breath, Chinwe made her way upstairs. Each step seemed heavier than the previous, and the shadows in the corners appeared to extend toward her, like hands reaching out to grasp her. As she reached the top of the staircase, the crashing noise came again, this time from one of the bedrooms at the end of the hall. Chinwe walked toward the room slowly, every fibre of her being telling her to turn back, to leave the house behind. But she couldn't. Not yet. She had to understand what was happening, had to find out why she was being lured into this realm. She pushed open the door, and what she saw made her blood run cold. The apartment was absolutely black, the windows closed firmly, yet in the middle of the room, a solitary candle flickered, throwing an eerie light on the walls. The furniture was overturned, the bedsheets were ripped, and there, standing in the midst of the room, was a figure. A guy, tall and lean, clothed in a black suit. His face was pale, almost ghostly, and his eyes glowed with an unnatural light. Chinwe froze, her breath trapped in her throat. The guy was gazing squarely at her, and she could feel his stare cutting through her. "You've come," the guy murmured, his voice low and soft, like honey. "You shouldn't have come." His words sent a shudder down her spine, but she couldn't pull her gaze away from his. "Who are you?" Chinwe inquired, her voice barely a whisper. The guy smiled, but it wasn't a warm grin. It was cold, empty. "I am the guardian of this home, just as Mr. Odie is. We are connected to it, just as you are now. You cannot leave, Chinwe, not now." The words struck her like a blow to the belly. Her pulse hammered in her chest as the stranger drew closer, his long, thin fingers stretching out toward her. "Why?" Chinwe choked out. "Why me? What do you want from me?" The man's grin grew. "What we want from you is simple. Your soul." The words rang in her thoughts as her legs gave way, and she lurched backward, barely just catching herself on the doorframe. Her mind was spinning, and everything around her seemed to blur. The room closed in on her, and she felt as though she was suffocating. "No!" she muttered, shaking her head furiously. "No! This can't be happening!" The guy chuckled gently, a sound that shot goosebumps through her whole body. "It has already started, Chinwe. You are already ours." Chinwee's breath came in jagged spurts as she fell backward, her eyes riveted on the stranger in the room. The guy, or whatever he was, proceeded to draw closer, his empty eyes gleaming with an eerie brightness. Her pulse pounded in her chest as terror shot through her veins. She wanted to flee, to escape, but every step she attempted to take seemed heavier than the previous. The room appeared to shut in around her, the walls squeezing closer and tighter as the guy neared. "No," she muttered again, her voice barely audible. The man's grin just grew, vicious and knowing. "It's too late for that. You've already entered the home, and now you belong to it. You belong to us." Chinwe felt the weight of his words sink over her, stifling her. Her legs shook, and she strained to keep on her feet, the horror threatening to shatter her. But at that instant, something deep within her stirred. A memory, a flash of power. Her mother's words lingered in her head, a soothing but strong reminder. "No matter how black the night, you have the strength to confront it. You bear our blood, our essence. Never forget that." Suddenly, Chinwe felt the earth under her feet move. The room around her blurred, the shadows in the corners twisting into bizarre creatures. But through the haze, she recalled something she had read in the ancient book. The lines about the woodland spirits, the home being tied to them. And at that instant, a spark of resistance flared inside her. The home wasn't just bad, it was a prison, a trap for souls, feeding off terror and sorrow. But it was also related to the forest, to the ancient spirits that had guarded it for generations. She closed her eyes, pulling in a long breath, and with it, she called out, not to the man or the ghosts who inhabited the home, but to the forest itself. She felt its presence, ancient and huge, engulfing her, embracing her in its chilly, quiet strength. The trees outside, the wind through the branches, the ghosts who had spoken her name, everything she had dreaded now became her power. She raised her hands, her voice rising in a chant that she didn't entirely comprehend, but felt deep in her bones. The words, uttered in the lost dialect of her forefathers, spilled from her lips like a torrent, each syllable bringing with it a weight of force that rocked the very air around her. The guy in front of her stumbled, his demeanor altering from arrogant assurance to a glimmer of dread. "No!" he snarled, his figure shifting like a shadow in the wind. "You cannot!" But Chinwe was no longer listening to him. She continued to chant, her voice rising louder, the words flowing quicker as the energy in the room swelled up, filling the area with an electric buzz. The walls appeared to pulsate, the house itself trembling in response. The ghosts, the ones who had claimed this place, started to stir, but now they were not the ones in charge. She was. The man's body convulsed, his eyes now wide with terror. "You don't understand," he cried. "The house will never let you go." "I'm not leaving," Chinwe replied firmly. "You are." The final syllable of the chant exited her lips with a burst of intensity, and suddenly the house appeared to fall in on itself. The lights flickered, and the air got dense, laden with old power. The guy screamed, his shape twisting and warping, and with a tremendous explosive crack, he faded into nothingness. The candle flickered out. The room became quiet. For a minute, Chinwe remained frozen, the only sound her own trembling breaths. The home, previously filled with oppressive blackness, suddenly seemed lighter. The crushing weight that had been weighing down on her appeared to have eased, as if the house had finally breathed after holding its breath for ages. Slowly, she turned and moved to the window, her legs wobbly under her. She could hear the wind outside, smooth and gentle now, as if it had been relieved from some invisible load. The forest no longer seemed like a place of peril, but rather a quiet protector. The ghosts that had formerly tormented the home appeared to have left, leaving only a lingering feeling of serenity. Chinwe smiled weakly. She had confronted the darkness that lurked inside the home, and she had vanquished it, not by raw force, but with the power that had always dwelt within her. Her ancestors' strength, their blood, had rushed through her, and she had regained the mansion, not as a prisoner, but as its rightful owner. She stepped out of the room, the door shutting behind her with a gentle click. The place, now calm, seemed like home. The village elders had been right. The home had been bound by the ghosts of the forest. But Chinwe had shattered that link. She had emancipated herself, and in doing so, freed the home. As she went outside onto the porch, the sun was starting to rise, colouring the sky with gentle colours of pink and orange. The forest was no longer scary. It was alive, energetic, and serene, just as the community had always been. Chinwe inhaled in the fresh air, her heart steady and serene for the first time in days. She had confronted the evil, and she had triumphed. But when the morning light seeped through the trees, she couldn't escape the impression that the home, finally free from its curse, had watched her intently. The woodland, too. They were no longer enemies. Now they were allies, ancient, smart, and strong. Chinwe understood that this was merely the beginning. With a last look back at the home, Chinwe walked forward, ready to face the future. A future where she wasn't simply a survivor of the past, but a woman who had taken her place in the world. A woman who had fought darkness and risen stronger than ever before. And as she moved toward the horizon, she could almost hear the tiniest whisper on the wind. This time, it was a voice of blessing, not of danger. "Welcome, Chinwe. Welcome home."